For anyone who's interested in supporting Rounds Rants, there's a Patreon page. And for those who've already donated amounts towards the podcast, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. It goes a hell of a long way with regards to renewing subscriptions, paying for new software, and ultimately making the podcast be the best it can possibly be. So if anyone's interested in donating, it can be $1 a month, it can be $1 in total, it can be $100, whatever you feel. There's a link below on SoundCloud. There's also a link on my Twitter page. There's a link on Facebook. And any donations, big or small, honestly would go a massive way in ensuring this podcast keeps going, as there are many hidden costs that not many people realise, and I really want to make sure that this podcast lasts for as long as it possibly can, without the support of the listeners. I'm not quite sure if that can happen. But anyway, any support would be greatly appreciated. If not, please just keep listening and sharing, as I want to keep this going. Thank you.
Welcome to the latest episode of Rounds Rant. Today I'm joined by professional rugby player Cathal Marsh, or in other words, the Clamper. So Cathal currently plays for Rugby United New York in America. So first of all, how are things in New York, Marshy?
Hey Richie, thanks a mil for having me on. All good here in New York, nice sunny day. The weather's getting a small bit better here, so just hiding from the sun a bit. My complexion doesn't really suit it, unfortunately.
No, we aren't blessed. So before we get to the heart of the matter, which is your current adventure, so to speak, in New York, I'd like to take you back a few years, or several years, as some would say, to your schoolboy days. Yeah, the schoolboy days in which many people can recall so vividly. Like, casting yourself back, what are some of your initial memories of Michael's, but more so on the rugby pitch, and how that eventually allowed you the platform to ultimately eventually go on and, you know, make a profession and make a job out of playing rugby?
Yeah, well, all my memories of Michael's are always obviously very positive. Just as a school in general, I think, well, especially in my time, and I'm sure it's still the case, they have a really good balance, right, between academics, obviously, and the rugby side. But I think there is an emphasis on enjoyment and making sure everyone's enjoying themselves. And I think it's pretty tight-knit, which when you compare it to other schools, it might not be the case. So, all my best friends, well, most of them I would have met in the primary school or the secondary school, and we're all still very tight. So, yeah, I have very fond memories all in all.
Like, were you one of these mad people? Well, not mad people, but just mad keen on rugby from the get-go? Were you a late bloomer?
I would have started down in Bective. My dad would have played down there when he moved up to Dublin from Limerick. So he brought me down when I was 6 or 7, and we actually had a very good team. Alex Kelly, Mark Craig, David Reynolds, a few other lads. We would have all played down there on a Sunday, and then when I came into Michael's, then we would have obviously started playing in the primary school then, and I would have loved it from the start. I think that's when at that age, just it's very pure, I guess, and you're just so excited to get out to the pitch and play with your best mates.
Pure is probably the best way to describe it at that early age, when you've got dads taking the reins as coaches and trying to put their identity on certain underage teams. But even on into the senior school, and I often, when I'm having debates, or when I did my schoolboy podcast with Gilso and the Bullet earlier this year, I always pinpoint about 2007, especially when they won the Senior Cup for the first time. But when you were at JCT level and your coach was Skeen, or Andy Skeen, is just to be politically correct, like, were you aware of the sudden change in professionalism and kind of standards across the board? Because, as I said, you would have done 13s, you might have been involved at junior level and second year. But, like, what was it like? Because that obviously is still talked about to this day, that first Jays final of Skeen's reign. And Alex Kelly's great try, and then obviously Andy Conway having the final say. But like, what was that whole season like, and especially leading on to your eventual finals to come with senior level? But what was it like to be a part of one of the first teams to really put their stamp in a Michael's jersey?
Yeah, well, I remember it was a pretty crazy season. We originally started off with Mr. O'Riordan, and yeah, he was doing a pretty good job. And
how many perimeters did you do?
Yeah, I remember we lost. We beat Methodist 28. I think we were 28-0 up, and then they scored a late try when we had all checked out. And that's it was like 28-7. So Mr. O'Riordan made us do 7 perimeters in front of our parents. So that was probably a bit much fun. But yeah, that was a crazy year. We knew there was some sort of siege took place around Christmas. Yeah, a coup. And then so Skian came in, but he would have been so young. You know what I mean? He would have been maybe 21.
Yeah, about that.
So he took over with this legend of a backs coach, Mike Donovan. He was like really old school, but a great coach, and he was a New Zealander. So yeah, no, straight away Skian's just organisation really was very impressive. And you know, the funny thing is I still know the patterns that we did at junior cup level. I still have them in my head. So that's how well drilled we were. But he was always very good with detail, and yeah, I think just the organisation, that was probably, with him and Greg coming in, I think that was probably a big change in mentality in the school.
No, I completely agree. And like, being a part of that sudden change in standards and stuff like that, and then getting so close in the final, leading up to then senior level, getting exposed to senior rugby, and then obviously Greg being the coach. Like, was there a certain stage, did it take until you got to 6th year, or was there a certain stage in maybe 4th or 5th year where you thought that maybe being a professional was a realistic option, or were you just simply enjoying the moment and taking each, I don't know, pre-season friendly as it came?
Yeah, well, I think Greg, so I would have had Greg since I was 13 or so, and straight away he sort of like took a shine into me, I guess. He would just given me a lot of confidence. At that stage, I was very small. Right up until 5th year, I would have been very small. Like I'd have always been the smallest on the team, and so Greg would have always like filled me up with confidence. And even when I probably wasn't, you know, the best player on the team, he would have always sort of filled me with chat that I was. You know what I mean? He would have called me like Carlos Spencer for 6 years. So I think when you have someone on the corridor saying that to you, it can really help your confidence, even when, like I said, I was probably too small to be that effective until I was in 6th year. And then at that stage I started to put on a small bit of size, and then I was able to play a lot better and be more effective. Yeah, so I had a good 6th year, and after that I guess the possibility of getting into, say, the sub-academy, the academy became realistic. So it probably wasn't until then that I thought about it.
Whenever I think back, or even when I chat to Emma or anyone involved in that year, like, and even as a student in St. Michael's, that SET team, that was pretty much the first team where it was kind of littered throughout with what we didn't know at the time, but future professionals. We saw the likes of yourself, we saw Dan Levy, Luke McGrath, etc. And there was some great games, and I remember the term champagne rugby was being dissed out on those dodgy stands in Donnybrook Stadium. But like, what are some of the memories? Is there any stories or any key moments in that season where you suddenly thought, because I remember there was actually a great pre-season game, whether I think it was against Black Rock in Michael's, or it could have been the year before, I'm not sure, but like, was there any moment where you thought, hang on, we can actually go on and win this, we have a great chance to follow up that win in 2007 and go on and win this game? Or was it very much Greg McWilliams type, let's take it week by week, let's enjoy the journey, not the destination?
Yeah, no, I think we were always very confident in our year. We had always done well together. We had a strong year. Miss was obviously our captain. Guys like Chris Kenna, Paddy Dix, and Alex Kelly, obviously. Like, still to this day, Alex is probably one of the best players I've played with. I don't know if you can remember some of him
Oh, he's a
growing
freak,
up, but he'd do absolutely ridiculous things on a week-to-week basis. And I remember Gavin Cummiskey in one of the reports said that he turned water into wine, which was a bit loose, a bit much, but it was fair at the same time. But then we also had young guys, like Luke, McGrath, and Levy was obviously young, but he was still probably one of our best forwards even at that age. So yeah, we obviously had Greg at the helm, so we were very sort of positive and free flowing. We probably fancied ourselves that we played the game the right way, but it was really, really enjoyable year all in all.
Thinking back to that final, and I don't want to try and dig up demons here, but unfortunately I'm in the same boat as well, and so are many other past Michael's lads, unfortunately, obviously apart from this year's crop, thank God. But what do you still vividly remember? The pre-game kind of antics, the lead up to it, the game itself, any of the pre-game speeches, what do you recall from that day in the RDS?
It's funny, the one thing I remember, and me and Luke always have a laugh about it, is actually when we saw Frank McGrath after the match in the hotel or the post-match reception, wherever we were, and we went over to him, and the first thing he said was, "Fucking awful start," which I think probably summed up our day. Like we were obviously very confident going into it, and then Clongo scored a couple of early tries, and then we just never really recovered. Like Clongos were a very different team to us. They had a very big pack, like the likes of the Byrne twins, Tyg Byrne, Jordan Coughlin, Connor Gilson. So there was a lot of sort of big carriers and stuff. So they probably just bullied us all around a small bit, and their backs played well as well. So they just beat us fair and square on the day, so there's no complaints at all.
Would I be right in saying Prendo was involved as well?
Yeah, sorry, Prendo was their main player. I think he scored two tries maybe.
If he was a metre from the line, it was pretty much curtains from there.
Yeah, I know, it's game over.
Below centre.
Don't even bother.
Yeah. And so how it works now is if you have a good 6-year, good SET campaign, you've got Leinster 20s, you then go into sub-academies, Irish 20s, etc. Were you straight away accepted into a underage provincial setup, or was it more of a late bloomer type thing, or was it after the Good Cup campaign you got a call from someone with Leinster and they were like, yeah, I would like you to come and play 20s or get into the sub-academy?
Yeah, I would have played Leinster schools and then Ireland schools at the end of the year, and then I was into the sub-academy and played a few years at Leinster 20s. Our Irish 20s was very good. The 410s were me, Jacko, Paddy Jackson, JJ Hanrahan and Jack Cardy. So there was a lot of talent there, but I managed to make it into most of the squads and I got a good bit of game time and stuff. So yeah, I went into the academy then after the under-20s campaign.
What was the academy like back then? So I'm trying to think, that would have been back in 2010, 2011 era. So were you confined to the academy? Were you up at the seniors at all initially? Because I know you went on 2 or 3 years later to sign your first senior contract, but what were those first few years like? Was this similar to what you sometimes see now, where half of the boys are kind of going to Dicey's on Tuesdays and kind of winging it for the rest of the week, or was it quite professional and quite strict?
Yeah, no, we had a really good crew. The Levy came in with us, obviously the likes of No, Reed and Lukey, and then other lads like Geordie Murphy and Conway, guys like that. So we used to have a great laugh together. Not too many of us are still around, so maybe too much of a laugh. But no, it's really good fun, and we were very successful. For the academy teams, we won 2 B&Is in a row. I don't think we lost a match in a couple of years, so it was great fun. We would have trained pretty hard, but enjoyed ourselves as well off the pitch.
Was there any, because I know you actually put up a pretty gas tweet with regards to the Leinster A adventure stateside this year, but was there any particular games or even nights out abroad in Wales or the UK, wherever you went, that stand out when you look back on those tours, so to speak?
Yeah, I can't try not to stitch.
Yeah, don't have to name names here if you want.
No, to be honest, most of the time we'd fly back the night after. If you were at Leinster, you'd fly back the night after. We had one or two away, which was always good fun in Bristol and London. But yeah, mostly it was just on the pitch. It was a really good buzz. We were playing with a very talented team. I'd like to Tyg Furlong, all those boys, Jack Conan, we were all on the same team. So yeah, it's more just a good buzz being successful with those boys.
I actually do think it is a pity that now because that used to be quite a competitive thing, and you used to have some pretty good sides and pretty good players being exposed to these up and coming players from Leinster and even Munster. And I thought that it was taken seriously across the board. And looking back on it, it actually was a good competition. I know AIL clubs, etc., weren't exactly the most pleased with it, but looking back on it, rather than sending 20 lads over to bloody New York on essentially what can only be described as I don't even know what you'd call it, a jolly up junket, like a life experience rather than a rugby one.
Too really.
Yeah. Kind of makes you wonder why it got disbanded in the first place, but without getting too technical on it. So to swiftly move on to when you signed your senior contract there in 2015. So who would have been the coach at that stage?
I think I made my debut under Joe just when he was about to leave, I think. I remember coming on for Sexton and playing with O'Driscoll and some of those lads at the time. So that was a big sort of wow moment, I guess. But I wouldn't have signed my contract probably until a year or two after under Matt O'Connor. And
it's good that you brought that up. It's tough to describe what the golden generation of Leinster is, because they keep churning out quality teams. But back then with the O'Driscolls, the Sextons, what was that week leading up? Was there any injuries midweek, or was it very much on the Monday? Joe Smith comes up to you and goes, "Listen, you're going to be on the bench. You could be making your debut." How was the few days leading up to, as you said, what would eventually be your senior debut?
Yeah, I think I'd had a good game maybe with the A's the week before. So we were heading over to Italy, I think, but for some reason all the main lads were still playing, and Joe just sort of mentioned it to me early in the week, I guess. And yeah, I think you are sort of you're a bit it's a bit of a wow moment at the start, but I think especially with him, I remember, you're so well prepared and the team are so well prepared that it's actually probably it's an easy enough job for the 10 because everyone knows their role so much. So I think you get a lot of, in any game, I think you get a lot of confidence through your preparation. So I just felt pretty prepared and I actually felt ready to go.
It's interesting thinking back to even nowadays what people think of when they hear Joe Smith's name is detail, power plays, everyone on the same page. And even when I had J.R. and Levy on, they spoke about having to know their roles, but obviously not having any issues with it, but knowing that if they carried out their roles, more than likely it's going to be successful. But I often hear the term, and it's probably lazy journalism and people on sofas just screaming at the TV, but a lot of people claim that Leinster side a few years ago was a bit more fluid than, say, what Ireland are, particularly now. If you can remember back to then, was Joe Smith very much a 3-4 phase type of coach that is just get your stuff right for these 4 or 5 phases and it'll pay off? Or was there a bit more freedom at that time and how Leinster played?
Yeah, it was probably both, to be honest with you. He was obviously put a lot of emphasis on his scouting, the opposition, and there was that aspect where if everyone knew their role on a play, we knew, where the team knew that they'd probably make a break, and then emphasis on supporting the break. But at the same time, you put a lot of work into skills. I remember he said when he came over, he wanted them to be the best passing team in Europe. So I think it was definitely a bit of both. I think you have to realise also, in international rugby, there's very, very little space. So it's a lot tougher to break teams down, especially these days. the size of some of those teams. Look at Saracens, England, Wales. There's not a lot of opportunity. There's not a lot of opportunity to make line breaks. So I think that's definitely an aspect as well these days.
Was there anything that particularly shocked you? Like, even speaking to some of the lads, as you know, and I know, sometimes they're like, geez, I didn't think it'd be that physical. I didn't think it'd be that quick. I didn't think the scrummaging would be this tough. Was there anything that shocked you? Because you'd played, as you said, A rugby, you'd played AL rugby. But was there anything you were like, geez, I need to maybe sharpen up my game here, or I need to improve on at an early stage?
Yeah, I think the higher level you go up, I think it's always just a small bit quicker and a small bit more physical. And obviously the scales are a bit higher. So for me, I guess I was always fit enough. So I think I just had to put on a small bit more size anyway. So similar to like I was in school, I just wasn't big enough to say if I had a half break, I wasn't physical enough to say get through. So I tried to put a bit more emphasis on my conditioning. And then, I think just as a 10, obviously, like with game management and stuff, there isn't as much space there. So you just have to make sure you're making the right decisions, I think.
That's a fair point. And 2015, during the World Cup, and a bit like this, the season coming in September and October, it's going to present itself a huge opportunity, especially a lot of the young lads currently at Leinster and other clubs in Ireland. Like, that proved to be a massive moment for you, because it gave you the starts and the appearances that were needed for you to get minutes under your body. I can't even actually think of the fucking term here. Under the belt. Yeah, under your body. Like, how sinister can you sound?
That's loose chat.
But anyway, it gave you the opportunity to get those appearances under your belt, as I should say. So, like, how crucial of a time was that for you to, as you said, build up the confidence, get the game time, get wins, start with the number 10 jersey? And like, the team wasn't doing overly well compared to previous years, but just how crucial of a moment was that in your career to get consistent game time?
Yeah, it was actually, Matt had just left and Leo had taken over. So it would have been Leo and Gerv's first year. But yeah, that was probably my most enjoyable time rugby wise at Leinster. Because like you said, I would have been starting. We had a sort of young team because the Irish lads were away at the World Cup, so I would have been playing week in, week out. Obviously been involved in sort of making the game plan for the week, and things were going well. I was playing well, so yeah, no, it was very enjoyable.
So that season, looking back, a lot of people claim it was a good year and a bad year in more ways than one. Results wise, it didn't exactly go according to plan. But as you said, there was a huge amount of young lads, yourself included, that got given the chance that at that moment didn't exactly get the results that were needed. But in a year or two down the line, it led to huge success for the club, and especially for the coaches like Leo and Gerv and the other lads as well. So, like, how tough was it? That must have been one of the first times where you felt that you were part of the team, but then you also were aware that the outside pressure, the media, even chatting to your friends, like, how were you dealing with some of the setbacks that kind of the exterior stuff, like the media, social media, whatever, were thrown at you in maybe a negative tone?
Yeah, I think, like, in general, I think I'm a pretty positive person, and I think I have pretty good perspective. So, I think I have good people around me, like friends and family. So, there's a lot bigger, or there's people with a lot bigger problems in the world. And say if you have a bad game, or if my biggest problem is playing for Leinster A instead of playing for Leinster, or being on the bench instead of starting. I think in the bigger scheme of things, I'm a pretty fortunate person. So I never. There was obviously tough days now, don't get me wrong, but I think I had pretty good perspective at the time.
Yeah, well, try sub an AL game down in Ballynahinch and then play a J1 game at Barnhole the next day.
Exactly.
precisely. So last thing on Leinster was coming to the end, and it was an unfortunate way for you with the injuries and the lack of game time, and then you had Joey, you had Ross, you had Sexton as well, so it was a very highly competitive position. Did you see it drawn to its, I don't want to say natural conclusion because it wasn't a natural one with the injury, but like how tough was this for you to realistically realise that your future probably belonged outside of Leinster in a different club? Or I know you eventually went on to New York, but like, was there some pretty difficult conversations needed had with friends, family, and coaches during that time?
Not really. It was sort of more of a gradual thing. So I just signed a new contract, and then that summer, Joey had a really good summer, and he had sort of just overtaken me. But I was still behind him, and then I tore a tendon in my hand, so I was out for maybe 3 or 4 months with that. And then at the same time, I think Joey had gotten injured as well, and maybe Sexton as well. So Ross came in then and did an amazing job. He was very solid, and I remember him playing very well in a couple of the big European games. And while all this was happening, Stuart had just come in, Stuart Lancaster. So by the time I had come back from injury, I was sort of already fourth choice, and obviously the 2 younger lads had built up a lot of trust. So from that point on, it was always going to be a big ask to get back into the fold.
So that leads you to decision time, and I don't know what exactly was going through your head, what offers you had, like what was going through your mind, because there was loads of media speculation whether you'd go to another Irish club or if you could go to the UK or else just stop playing rugby at all. Like, what sort of decisions did you have to make? I know New York came in eventually, but was there other clubs interested in you? Were you considering maybe stepping away from rugby and going the more traditional, I don't know, business life? Like, what was your thought process during that month or 2 period where you were deciding on what's best for you?
Well, it was a small bit more challenging because I had a serious enough foot injury at the time, so I'd injured it around Christmas time, when usually you'd sort of be trying to pick up another club, and then re-injured it sort of in April. So I wasn't actually sure if I'd be able to, say, participate in a pre-season in June. So I was chatting to my agent, and there was offers on the table, but it would have been more from sort of like the lower teams in the Pro 14, or I remember there was an opportunity to play, say, in the ITM Cup or something like that. But like, I think I do love rugby, obviously, but I think I do have good balance. You know what I mean? I got all my college done. I have a decent degree from Trinity and stuff, so it wasn't the case where I was just going to go play anywhere that would have me. It would have to have been sort of the right offer, or, as it turns out, something a bit different, like something over in New York. So when they eventually came in and offered me that, I just thought, let's go for it, something a bit different. And I hadn't done much travel and stuff, so I was looking forward to just a bit more of a new life experience, I guess.
Yeah, that's fair. It's an interesting point about the college thing, because sometimes you've got 28-year-olds with 150 Leinster caps sitting arts exams in the RDS, so it was probably grateful from your own perspective that you got that out of the way.
Yeah, no, for sure. My parents are very good, to be fair. They just told me, just get it done, and then you'll be so happy you did. So there was a lot of bluff and a lot of very loose assignments. But no, I was over the moon to get it done in the end.
Yeah. I'm not going to accuse you, but let's just say a few potential Leinster players I'm aware of are not exactly doing their essays, so to speak. Anyway, they can see me in court.
Comment on that.
Yeah, exactly. And on the move to the US, I know Greg was over there at the time getting his juices flowing with Yale and starting off with the US side. Did you consult him at any stage, or was it more or less the coaches and the managers from New York that convinced you, or did you get second opinions?
Yeah, Greg had said it to me during the previous year, but I couldn't really remember, to be honest, because it was just sort of general chat. And then once I was looking for something in the summer, he sort of mentioned it again. I think he's decent enough friends with our manager over here, James English. So I think he mentioned it to him, and then he got on to me that way. So yeah, like I said, it didn't. As soon as he got on to me, it only took a couple of weeks, and then I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go for it.
Yeah, envious. And now it's transpired that you had the likes of yourself, you had Ben Foden, you now have a certain behemoth coming across from France, and obviously Mark O'Keefe. I better throw his name in there, or else I'd be in a bit of bother, I should say. And what were your initial thoughts? Obviously, the allure of living in New York is great, but as you said, you like to have that balance, and you love rugby as well. Like, what were your initial? I'm trying to think. Your reactions to the rugby culture over there, because obviously it's developing and it's not exactly up to the levels of, say, Ireland or England or some of the other major nations, but they've definitely come on leaps and bounds. But like, what were some of the things that kind of stood out to you as being maybe slightly different to what you'd experience in Ireland?
Yeah, no, the whole rugby scene over here is it's still, obviously, especially in New York, it's our first year, so we're still sort of, the guys are still getting the club off the ground. The owner, James Kennedy, and the manager, James English, are both very ambitious, but playing rugby or any sort of sport in New York is very tough because there just isn't the facilities. If you even look at, say, the Jets or the Giants, American football teams, they play out in New Jersey, whereas we're very much based in the city. So, we go to a gym, say, in Central Park, then another place to go get our physio, and then we train in the evening times in another place. So it would be great at some stage to have sort of our own headquarters where we can do all our training at once. But that's probably a year or two down the lines. But I think that is in the pipeline in the future.
Well, that's probably one of the more intriguing and interesting parts of being in the league, where I think a few years ago I remember reading Muleina had joined a San Francisco team or somewhere, and within a month the contract basically was ripped up and the whole league kind of folded. So they've seemed to have learned their lessons in that regard. But like, is that part of the excitement that, yes, there are many things that need to be fixed and brought up to the standard that's been set across Europe and then some other countries, and especially when you look at the other major sports in America? I'm not saying rugby needs to compete with NFL, NBA, etc., but as you said, having your own complex to train, go to the gym, do physio, etc., would be ever so handy to have, and it would obviously improve performance, no doubt. But is that part of the intrigue and excitement that you've basically come in and the team is not, well, it is more or less starting from scratch, but being able to kind of stamp, I don't want to say legacy because then it just sounds like some stupid fucking Hollywood film, but like being part of something that's just begun and seeing all the possibilities of how it can grow and improve?
Yeah, exactly. I do think we can sort of shape the future a small bit. And obviously the lads in the office were always sort of asking my opinion and say Ben's opinion on how Leinster did things or how they can improve certain aspects. And I think we've already made lots of improvements. And I do genuinely think the future will be bright over here. There's one or two things that could happen that could probably help the league a lot in the future. One of them would probably be, there's a rule at the moment where if you're in college over here, you can't play with the professional teams. I don't know why now, but I think that sort of, if they could change that, that would be great, because that would get a lot more sort of the young talent in. And there's some good colleges like Cal Berkeley and Life University and stuff, where there'd be players playing there who'd be in the Eagle squad, but they're not allowed to play in the MLR team. So I think there's always a lot of excitement around, say, if you have a young local player playing, similar to what Leinster have. So if they could sort of fix that, I think that would be very big for the league going forward.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I didn't actually know that, and I always thought, I was like, geez, I actually know a good few players who could have played sub academy or even AL 1A level back here, and they were off in university, and I was wondering why they're not playing professionally, but that obviously ties it together. And one of the last things on the New York side, or even the league in general, is like even a lot of debates back here in Dublin with people, including myself, who maybe the best days are slightly behind them. There's a lot of debates about like what's the standard like, and some people debate that it could be very, very high, it could be quite low. Like, what were your initial thoughts on basically the standard, and what you could maybe compare it to from maybe even just a standard or physical point of view?
Yeah, like it's extremely physical. Like they're well able to hit you if you bring it to the line, or if you're defending and stuff. There's a lot of big boys and a lot of big athletes, sort of ex-football guys, or a lot of Polynesian lads over here. So I'm trying to stay away from all that aspects to that as well. But yeah, I think skill level wise, the defenses are pretty loose. That's the one thing. All the games are very high scoring. So the defensive structures probably aren't quite on par with Europe, where you see a lot of men in the line. Not many in the backfield. Here, it's more sort of like wedge defenses and stuff, and there's a lot of points scored. I think we play in hot weather as well, so the defenses get fatigued a lot easier. So it's easier to attack that way. But the skill level is pretty high, I've thought. Probably similar enough to AIL, or maybe like the championship or something. So now I've been impressed by the skill level.
Yeah. And how are you guys doing? I know you're currently, if I'm not mistaken, in the playoff picture. You're currently, as it stands, if I'm not mistaken, currently in the playoffs as it stands. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, we're in 4th place at the moment.
So just for the lads who haven't been keeping track of it, are completely ignorant to how the league works, and it's a bit of a boring question, but how is the league structured? Do you play each other once? Do you play home and away? How does the league pan out?
Yeah, so there's 9 teams, and you play each other home and away. So 16 games, and bonus points the same as home. So because the weather's so cold in New York, we played most of our games away in January, February. And it's funny, we're actually probably a better team away from home because, like I said, we don't have, say, many meetings and things like that when we're over in New York, because a lot of the lads would work during the day. So when we're away from home, we have a lot more time together, and we can probably go over a bit more of the detail. So we started the season very well, and then had a few setbacks in the last couple of months, but we picked up a good win on the weekend, and we have 2 big weeks now. So if we get 2 wins, we'll be in the playoffs, and if we get there, I'd be confident we could go all the way.
Well, fingers crossed, and a lot of people here in South Dublin will be keeping their eyes firmly peeled on on what happens there. And just from a off the pitch point of view, like what if, as you said, like when you're a rugby player in Ireland, you get maybe 2 weeks, sometimes at best, to go travel the world and then come back and report for pre-season training. And obviously you can't go completely all over the place and kind of go over the top on your holiday. So like, what was it like? What basically does New York have to offer? And then also the great thing about the league, as you pointed out, is you get to go to places like San Diego, Seattle, etc. So I'd imagine, although it is a professional thing and you want to win the game ultimately on the weekend, I'm pretty sure there's some pretty good sightseeing and nights out to be had.
Yeah, just sightseeing for us. But no, it's been really good fun. Like you said, O'Keefe is over here. He's a great boy, and there's a good few Irish lads. So we have a great laugh, and the Americans are great boys as well. So I think we have a good team. It's pretty diverse, people coming from different backgrounds, but we've had a serious laugh. We've been to, say, places like New Orleans, Bourbon Street, places like San Diego, and it's different to Leinster, where here you'd stay over for the weekend. So now that aspect has been great, and because it's New York, I've had a lot of people come visit, say, on weekends and stuff. So when you get the time to show them around, it's great crack.
Yeah, sounds like the life balance, as you previously talked about, is in good working order. Where do you reckon the best place you've been to, or where's the best place you've been in regards to who you've played and the city or the town in which you played? What was the most interesting, to put it in a political fashion?
Yeah, Seattle was a very cool city. A lot of culture there. San Diego is an amazing spot as well. I don't know if
I've been to both. Yeah.
Very, very relaxed down by Pacific Beach, and we stayed on a couple of extra days there. So
for a bit of recovery,
that was very enjoyable. Yeah, or.
Oh, so that more or less wraps up the formal part of the podcast, Marshy. So the last thing I do is a quick fire round. So
yeah,
anything that pops in, just scream it out, and hopefully.
Yeah, I'm not great on the spot here, so I might have to take some time.
Yeah, well, just make sure you don't throw anyone under the bus. So an easy one to start off anyway. Your favourite film?
Favorite film, maybe Training Day.
Yeah,
I enjoy that. And actually, the Black Rock Syndicate. Does that count as a film? The Instagram film.
Yeah, that's a short film. Short film.
That's my most recent one. But probably Training Day. That was very good.
Good pick. And you're the strangest thing you've seen on a rugby pitch?
Alex Kelly probably where he was in fourth year. He made a Terranure guy bleed between the ears because he hit him so hard up in Terranure, and I think the whole game got stopped for good. So that was something I hadn't seen before.
It doesn't have to be the best coach you've had, but who the favourite coach you've ever had? It's highly controversial as well.
Yeah,
but anyway.
I'll have to plead the fifth. But I'd have to pick Greg McWilliams, I'd say, just for his energy, I guess, and the confidence he gave me. He would have told a lot of people I was a lot better than I was, so I'd have to give him the shout for that one.
Okay, well done, Greg. So your favourite roommate. So over the years, who was the roommate where you were like, right, this is going to be good crack tonight?
Probably the big boy Craig Cusack. I lived with him for 2 years in Dublin, so he was a lot of energy for any of your listeners who know him. I'm sure they've come across him.
Oh yeah.
But in rugby, it's probably Luke. Probably we used to have a good crack. It's always nice when you go away and you're with one of your best mates. So now we used to always have a great laugh.
Yeah, no doubt. So, the best schools player you faced?
It would have to be Conway, yeah. Duncan Weir, we used to call him. But
good shout.
He was ridiculous against us a couple of times. That junior cup final, and I know he was incredible back in the day, and still obviously is a great player.
Yeah. So second last one here, and this actually isn't even my own one. This was sent to me personally via my Instagram message, and I'm sure a lot of people would be interested. So you're well renowned for your slang and the use of words that wouldn't exactly make sense to the common man and Drumcondra, but like, what is your go-to favourite bit of slang, or what word would your go-to be?
Oh, Jesus. I'm 27 at this stage, so I think I need to pack up all that sort of stuff. But I guess I've been going with breather a lot recently.
Breather.
I've stopped calling people breather.
Really? That's the sign that you're actually getting old and you're growing up and maturing.
I think I have to, Richie, to be honest.
Yeah, don't we all?
I've had a good run.
Yeah, you have, in fairness. So last but not least, and this is always a shit way to finish it. It's very tough for the guest to nail it, but describe yourself in 3 words.
3 words. Positive, I guess. Happy and a breather.
Strong finish. Well, listen, Marshy, that wraps it up, and I want to thank you for coming on. This is actually the first time I've had someone in the United States come on at a reasonable hour from an Irish point of view, so it's great not to be getting up at 2 or 3 in the morning to do a podcast for once. So I speak on behalf of, I'm sure, most of the listeners that we wish you all the best in the coming weeks, and we hope you boys get to the playoff and we can see Prince Luce hopefully light up the semi-final and final stages. But no, listen, thanks a million for coming on, and I wish you well in the coming weeks.
Thanks a million, Rich. It's been a pleasure, and all the best. Thanks, bud.